Picture this. It is 6:30 in the morning, and I am sitting on a narrow balcony in Tagaytay with a chipped blue coffee mug warming both hands. The air is cool enough that I am wearing a thin sweater, which still surprises me because when people hear the Philippines, they imagine heat pressing down on you from sunrise to midnight. Below me, a tricycle coughs to life on the road. Somewhere behind the houses, a rooster is losing an argument with another rooster. I can smell garlic frying in oil from the little carinderia at the corner. And for the first time in years, I am not scared to check my bank account. That is the part I have never said out loud to anybody. Not the moving part. Everybody knows I moved. Not the Philippines part. I have posted enough pictures of Taal Lake and bowls of bulalo for people back home to know where I ended up. The part I never said was how frightened I had become before I left. I was 68 years old, living outside Dayton, Ohio, and trying to make $1,260 a month cover a life that had been built for a much bigger number. $1,260. That was my Social Security deposit after the deductions came out. It sounds like money until you start subtracting. My name is Robert Miller. Most people call me Bob. I spent 37 years working maintenance in a packaging plant. Nothing glamorous. Conveyor belts, hydraulic lines, motors, bearings, electrical panels, and machines that always seemed to break 5 minutes before the end of a shift. I had a wife named Carol, 2 daughters, a ranch house with beige siding, and a retirement plan that looked reasonable on paper. Then life started taking pieces out of it. Carol got sick first, ovarian cancer. We fought it for 3 years. I say we because that is what husbands say, but she was the one who carried the pain. I carried folders, insurance forms, medication lists, and a little spiral notebook filled with questions for doctors. We drove to appointments in rain, snow, and summer heat. The bills did not arrive all at once. That would have almost been kinder. They came in white envelopes, one after another, each with numbers that looked manageable until you stacked them together. Co-pays, prescriptions, tests that were covered but not completely, specialists who were in the hospital network but somehow not in the insurance network. I know. Famous last words. We thought we had good insurance. By the time Carol died, the savings account we had spent 30 years building was mostly gone. That was not the worst part. The worst part was that I had promised her I would be all right. She was lying in a hospital bed in our living room, and the late afternoon sun was coming through the blinds in thin yellow stripes. She squeezed my fingers and said, "Don't turn into an old ghost in this house." I laughed because I did not know what else to do. Then I became exactly that. For 2 years, I lived alone in rooms that still belonged to both of us. Every object had a memory attached to it, and every memory came with a bill. The mortgage was paid off, which sounds like security. But the property taxes were over $300 a month when I divided them across the year. Homeowners insurance kept climbing. The furnace needed work. The roof had a soft spot. My monthly numbers looked like this: $312 set aside for property taxes, $148 for insurance, $210 for utilities in a good month, $86 for phone and internet, $190 for Medicare and supplemental coverage beyond what had already been deducted. I had $1,260 coming in. $1,260. I started using a yellow legal pad to decide which bill could wait. At first I called it budgeting. Then one winter morning, I sat in the kitchen wearing a coat because I had turned the thermostat down to 58, and I realized budgeting was not the right word anymore. I was rationing my life. My daughters wanted me to sell the house. They were not cruel. I need to make that clear. Susan lived in Columbus with her husband and 2 teenagers. Megan lived in Indianapolis and had just gone back to work after a divorce. They loved me, but they had lives already filled to the edges. Susan offered me her finished basement. What I heard was, "You can fit downstairs." That is unfair, and I knew it even then. But pride is not logical. You spend your whole adult life being useful, paying your own bills, fixing things for everybody else. Then one day your daughter is measuring whether your dresser will fit beside the water heater. I told her I would think about it. I did think about it, every night. I also looked at senior apartments. The decent ones cost more than my monthly income before food. The cheaper ones had waiting lists. One place smelled like boiled cabbage and industrial cleaner. I went back to my truck and sat there for 20 minutes. I tried everything before I left. I sold my fishing boat, even though calling it a boat was generous. I stopped driving unless I had 2 or 3 errands to combine. I bought canned soup when it was on sale and froze bread. I learned which grocery store marked down meat on Tuesday mornings. I even took a part-time job at a hardware store, but standing on concrete for 6-hour shifts made my left knee swell until I could barely climb the steps to my porch. I looked at moving to cheaper places in the United States. The rent was lower in some towns, but then I would need a car for everything, and healthcare was farther away. I was not looking for luxury. I was looking for a life where one broken water heater would not destroy me. The Philippines entered my life through a man named Dennis Harper. Dennis and I worked together at the plant for 22 years. He retired before I did and moved to Iloilo with his Filipino wife, Lisa. One night I saw a photo of him sitting outside a small house with a fan turning above him. He had lost weight. He looked relaxed. Not vacation relaxed. Different, like his shoulders had finally dropped. I sent him a message. "How much does a place like that cost?" He replied 10 minutes later, "Bob, you're asking the right question." That started the rabbit hole. YouTube videos, expat forums, Facebook groups, cost of living spreadsheets, visa rules, health insurance discussions, horror stories about scams, success stories that sounded too polished. I watched everything. At first I assumed the people making it work were wealthy. Then I started seeing ordinary retirees, former truck drivers, school custodians, veterans, warehouse workers, men living on $1,200, $1,500, $1,800 a month. Regular people, not rich. That mattered to me more than the palm trees. I researched for almost 9 months. I called Dennis and asked questions. He warned me not to arrive and immediately buy property, lend money, or fall in love with the first person who smiled at me. Rent first, he said. Keep your money boring. That might be the best advice anybody gave me. Tagaytay was not my first idea. I considered Iloilo because Dennis was there. Then I watched a video filmed in Tagaytay. Green hills, cooler air, markets full of pineapples and vegetables, hospitals nearby. Manila close enough for major appointments, but far enough that I would not be living inside the noise. I joined a Facebook group and started asking about rentals. Then a woman named Maribel sent me photographs of a small, furnished apartment above her aunt's house. 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, a balcony facing a row of trees. The rent was 18,000 pesos a month, including water and internet. At the exchange rate then, it was about $320. $320. I stared at that number for a long time. Selling the house was the hardest part, not because of the paperwork, because every room had a version of Carol inside it. Susan and Megan came for a weekend, and we went through boxes. Keep, donate, trash. At one point, I sat on the floor of the bedroom, holding one of her scarves. Megan sat beside me. "You don't have to do this," she said. "Yes," I told her, "I do." The house sold for less than I hoped and more than I feared. After fees, repairs, and clearing the last debts, I had just under $62,000. That was everything. my retirement reserve, my emergency fund, my second chance. I put most of it in accounts I could access from abroad and promised my daughters I would not make any large financial decision without waiting 72 hours. My flight left from Chicago in October. When the plane landed in Manila, the heat hit me the moment the airport doors opened. I thought, what have you done? There it was, the panic. You are 68 years old. You have sold your home. You are standing on the other side of the world, sweating through your shirt, and a driver is holding a cardboard sign with your name spelled Robert. The drive to Tagaytay took hours because of traffic. I watched buildings thin out, then shops, roadside stands, churches, concrete walls, fruit vendors, and sudden stretches of green. When we reached the apartment, it was smaller than the photos made it look. Of course it was. The refrigerator hummed loudly. The shower had a water heater mounted directly on the wall, which made me suspicious. The mattress was firm enough to qualify as construction material. A gecko watched me from near the ceiling. For the first time since leaving Ohio, nobody needed anything from me. That silence was not peaceful yet. It was terrifying. The next morning, Maribel's aunt, Elena, knocked on my door, carrying a plate of sliced mango and pan de sal. She was in her 70s, wore bright pink slippers, and spoke enough English to tell me I looked tired. She pointed at the food. Eat first, be worried later. That became a kind of rule for me. Eat first, be worried later. My first month was full of small humiliations. I stood in the wrong line at immigration for almost an hour. I also learned. I learned to carry small bills. I learned that maybe later can mean no. I learned that a smile is not always an invitation, but it is often a kindness. I learned the morning market was cheaper than the supermarket. I learned which pharmacy stocked my blood pressure medicine. My monthly expenses settled into a pattern. 18,000 pesos for rent, water, and internet. Around 6,000 for electricity, depending on how often I used the air conditioner. 10 to 12,000 for groceries and meals. Some months were higher, some were lower. I did not live like a king. I hate when people say that. It makes the Philippines sound like a place where foreigners arrive to be served. I lived like a man who could finally breathe. There is a difference. I ate lunch at the corner Carinderia for less than I used to spend on a fast food combo. I walked more because the weather was pleasant in the morning. My knee improved after I lost 14 pounds. But money was only the first part of it. The surprise was being known. At home, after Carol died, I could go 3 or 4 days without speaking to anyone face to face. In Tagaytay, Elena noticed if I did not come downstairs. The woman at the sari-sari store started keeping the coffee I liked. A tricycle driver named June learned where I lived and would wave if he saw me walking uphill with groceries. None of these people were my family, but kindness still counts. 6 months after I arrived, I got sick. When you are alone in a foreign country, every symptom becomes a headline in your mind. Elena heard me coughing through the open window. Within an hour, Maribel had arranged a ride to the clinic. June drove. Elena sent a bag with water, crackers, and a towel. The doctor said it was a bacterial infection and gave me medication. The total bill, including the consultation and medicine, came to a little under $50. I came home, lay down, and cried. Not because I was sick, because people had noticed. That sounds small until you have spent 2 years feeling invisible. My daughters visited the following January. I worried they would hate it. Susan stepped inside, looked around, and said, "Dad, this is actually nice." We sat on the balcony that evening while fog moved between the trees. I explained my emergency account, visa calendar, and the people they could contact if something happened. That was the moment they stopped seeing the move as a crisis. They saw a plan. Susan asked whether I was lonely. I told her the truth. Sometimes. Moving does not erase grief. Palm trees do not cure it. Cheap rent does not bring your wife back. There are evenings when I still reach for my phone to tell Carol something. There are mornings when I wake up disoriented and expect to see our old bedroom. But loneliness here does not have the same walls around it. I can go downstairs. I can walk to the market. I can sit outside with coffee while the street wakes up. I can hear life happening close to me. A year after I moved, I returned to Ohio for 3 weeks. The first night at Susan's house, I slept in the finished basement. The room was comfortable. I was grateful. I was also awake at 2 in the morning, listening to the furnace click on, thinking about my little balcony in Tagaytay. That was when I understood something. The Philippines was no longer the place I had escaped to. It was home. Not because everything was easy. The bureaucracy can wear you down. Traffic can turn a short trip into an afternoon. Some people see a foreign face and assume there is money behind it. You need boundaries. You need patience. You need enough savings for medical emergencies and a return flight. If you are coming because you think a younger woman will fix your life, do not come. If you are coming because you expect everyone to accommodate you, do not come. If you are coming with your last $500 and no backup plan, do not come. But if you are willing to rent, listen, adapt, and live within the country instead of trying to build a little America around yourself, then your money can buy something here that it could no longer buy me back home. Time, dignity, room to make a mistake without losing everything. My $1,260 still arrives every month. It did not grow. I changed the life I was asking it to support. That is the part people miss. They ask whether the Philippines is cheap. Cheap compared to what? A luxury condominium in Manila is not cheap. Imported cheese is not cheap. Private international health insurance at my age is not cheap. But my ordinary life in Tagaytay is affordable. My rent is paid. My lights stay on. My refrigerator has food in it. I can see a doctor without spending the rest of the month afraid. I can buy a birthday gift for my granddaughter without moving another bill to next week. I can sit in a cafe once in a while and order coffee without doing arithmetic in my head. There was another change I did not expect. Back in Ohio, I had begun measuring my usefulness by how little trouble I caused. I did not ask my daughters for help. I did not mention the cold house. I did not tell them when I skipped a prescription refill for a week. I thought dignity meant needing nothing from anyone. Living here taught me something different. Dignity is not the same as isolation. Sometimes dignity is paying your own rent and still letting a neighbor bring you soup. Sometimes it is admitting you do not understand a form at immigration and asking for help instead of pretending. Sometimes it is having enough left at the end of the month to invite Elena and Maribel to lunch, not because I owe them, but because generosity feels good when it is a choice instead of an obligation. I have also become useful again. I fixed Elena's noisy ceiling fan. I repaired a loose cabinet hinge at the Carinderia. June brings me small electrical things that have stopped working, and we sit outside with a screwdriver set spread between us. Most of the time I can still find the problem. That matters. I did not cross an ocean just to spend less money. I crossed it because the life I had left in Ohio was getting smaller every year. Here, even at my age, my world started expanding again. This morning, the same as most mornings, I woke before sunrise. I opened the balcony door and felt the cool air come in. A neighbor was sweeping leaves from the concrete. Someone was playing an old love song on a radio. Elena called up to ask whether I wanted fresh pandesal. I checked my bank account. The deposit was there, $1,260, the same number that used to feel like a sentence. I carried my coffee outside and sat in the plastic chair by the railing. The paint is peeling a little now. The blue mug has another chip. Down the road, June's tricycle started with its familiar cough. I thought about Carol in that hospital bed, telling me not to become an old ghost in our house. It took me a long time to understand that she was not telling me to forget her. She was telling me to keep living. So that is what I am doing. Not richly, not perfectly, but without fear deciding every small part of my day. And for me, that has been worth crossing an ocean.